Welcome to Distracted, the podcast with Angela Lockwood, the place where you will find practical brain-boosting strategies, expert insights, and real-life stories to help busy brains thrive in the age of distraction. Let's go. Welcome to Distracted. I'm Angela Lockwood, and today is a very special episode for all of you amazing team leaders, hardworking managers, people who lead teams of people. It is a very practical strategy podcast episode today. So this will require you to get a pen and piece of paper. And if you are out exercising, if you're driving, you can come back to it later and just write those talking points down, because there are strategies today that I'm going to cover with you to help minimize the overwhelm for your teams. Now, the reason this episode has come about, I have done a lot of work recently across different industries with teams, and the manager or the team leader has asked for me to come in to speak to the team about how they can stay focused through their work, how they can look after their own well-being, not get pulled in so many directions. How can they feel connected to their work, and how can they feel like their day is being productive? But what I'm finding is that the team leaders and the managers are actually struggling with this themselves. And because they're struggling with this themselves, the team is getting mixed messaging, that they're being told one thing, but they're seeing a different thing, and they're seeing different behaviors, different messaging. And when that happens, when they're looking to the person that's trying to look after them, and they're seeing incongruence to the messaging, to their actions, then it can get pretty confusing within a team. So it's not just the teams that I've been working with recently. I have seen this time and time again over many, many years. And since I wrote my second book, Switch Off, it was back in 2017. So I have been delivering workshops even before then. But since that time, I have noticed that the disconnect between the strategies that we're teaching teams of people to what they're seeing in their leaders is very different. So I want to give you some really practical ways that you can implement really tangible activities, tangible, practical ways that you can show your team ways that can help them manage their overwhelm. And they are very, very specific, some of them. Some of them will be, I'll be talking about what Microsoft can do, but there are different platforms that you can use. But what I don't want you to do is feel overwhelmed by having to implement all these things that we're going to be talking about. What I want you to do is feel in control and just choose whatever I'm sort of sharing. Go, hey, that is a really good idea. I'm going to take that one. All right. If you aren't doing any of the things that I'm talking about, then we have probably a little bit bigger issue that you might need to reach out to me to get some direct one-on-one support. But what this is about today is how can we reduce overwhelm for our teams? Okay. And what is happening is so many teams, no matter your industry, are feeling the overwhelm epidemic, that people are really struggling more than ever with things like digital distractions, the sense of decision fatigue. So having so many decisions that they have to make that their brains are literally becoming exhausted, and a lot of competing priorities. And so they have their own set of priorities, but then there's also the workplace priorities, there's systemic priorities. And so all of these things are sort of getting a little bit mixed up, and people are feeling really overwhelmed. And I know that people are so aware of this overwhelm epidemic. The challenge is how do we work within it? Because so much of our energy and our attention and our thought is often about how do we manage all of the external distractions, right? When sometimes what we're doing is we're actually setting ourselves up for failure, and we're creating systems and processes. We're using so many different apps. We're trying to manage our time and managing our distractions so much that it's taking our focus away from the things that we really need to be doing. So there are some things we're going to talk about today that is very much around how can you set up the environment or the systems around your work habits so that the distractions are minimized just naturally. Okay, that people are really clear around what's expected of them. There's no second guessing, or there's really clear outcomes and tangible things that people can take from meetings or from their day. So I don't want to talk too much around all the reasons why we're feeling so overwhelmed and so, frantic or even stuck. Why? I don't want to go into why, because I reckon we all know that, right? Too busy, too many competing priorities, too many distractions, too many external expectations. We are just feeling like we're running ragged. So let's have a look at some of the different strategies through the lens of my framework, which is the AIM framework, where I look at awareness, intention, and mastery. And it's a really practical model to help teams regain control. And through the workshops that I run within organizations, I step people through in a lot of detail this AIM model around how they can apply these three things of awareness, intention, and mastery into the workflow of their day. Because you know that there's research, right, that has shown around the UC Irvine study in particular that shows that we are interrupted every single 3 minutes. Like every 3 minutes, we get interrupted by something. And it could be a notification that pops up on our computer. It could be someone walking in. It could be overhearing a conversation. It could even be our internal thoughts, right? That every 3 minutes we're getting interrupted, but it's taking us, 20 minutes longer, 20, 23 minutes to regain our focus back after we're interrupted. So we're almost in this cycle of constant interruption and trying to get back to a state of focus. So no wonder we're always constantly being pulled in so many directions, right? But through my workshops, what I hear time and time again is people go, "It's just not me. I just find it hard to focus. It's just not my personality. Like I'm somebody who gets distracted easy." I just want to dispel that myth before we jump into this. Is yes, there is lots of different. There's neurodiversity amongst people. And some people do have different ways that they focus. Some people do have different ways that they manage their distractions. Some people require different strategies than others. But focus isn't an actual personality trait, it is a skill that can be learnt. So, teaching the skill of how to focus is something that we can develop. So, if you are somebody who you feel naturally becomes distracted, then it's okay. There is ways that you can implement into your day to help you stay focused. And the more that you practice this, and the more that you sort of develop these mastery skills, they become so much easier. It becomes so much easier to stay focused through your day. But you as a manager, you as a team lead, you can actually help your team be successful and not set them up for failure. Now, I'm not saying you do this deliberately. I am sure you did not set your team up for failure deliberately, but maybe through complete, just not aware. You're not aware. This is just the way that your manager might have done it with you. It's the way that you've seen, things done. So therefore, your management style is because of the influences you've had. But I'd like to maybe challenge some of those influences. If they're not working for you and you're seeing that your team is frantic and that your team there's a little bit unrest among your team, or you're seeing that they're quite exhausted, then maybe it's time to shift a couple of the ways that you're doing things to help them feel like they're in control of their time, that they've got the energy to get through the day, and just purely through the way that you're designing the things that you do as a leader. Okay. So, what I want you to think about before we jump into all of these practical strategies, because I do want to go into those, there's some really cool ones I want to go through with you. Just have a quick think. What are the top 3 distractions that you see impacting your team right now? So, think of your team, almost take like a helicopter view, look at your team and think, what are the things that they're struggling with the most right now? What are the things that are impacting on their time and their ability to get really good work output? Now, if you're listening to this going, do you know what? My team's functioning really well at the moment. We've got really good outputs. We're meeting our key milestones. We're actually ticking along really well. Use this time and through this episode and this conversation to think, well, what is it that you're doing that's creating that environment for them? Because we know that managers and leaders take really, they set the tone of a workplace, they set the expectations of the workplace. So if your team is ticking along and everyone feels like they're in control and everyone's really thriving, there is something that you're doing also to create that environment for them. So use this as a great opportunity to think, well, what am I doing to manage these potential distractions for them? So, if you've thought about what are those top three distractions, this is the first step to becoming really aware of what's going to work for your team. And I talked about that AIM model. Awareness is always the first step in helping people understand focus and distraction and how to work with both. So, if you can have a look at that and go, well, what are the top three distractions in my team right now? Um, and being aware of those, if you have the ability to write those three things down. And I want you to have a look at those three things and think, are they internal distractions for your team? So things like stress, that they're mind wandering in a way that's not great for them. Are they, is there a lot of turmoil at the moment within the organization? Is there, impending changes that are coming up that people are feeling quite stressed by? Is there a lot of uncertainty at the moment? Or are they external things? So things like there are too many meetings. Does everyone complain about how many emails they're getting? Is there a lot of things that feel like they're outside of people's control that are impacting on them? So have a look at those three things and where do they fall? All right. So there are lots of different ways. We're going to literally jump straight into some of the strategies now that you can do as a leader to minimize overwhelm within your team immediately. Okay, so these aren't fluffy things. It's not like we know all those team building things that you've been to, which some have probably been great with really good strategies, but other things that might just be, really high level strategies that don't really translate into your workplace. I want these to be things that you can immediately action within your team if they resonate with you and how your team functions. Okay, so let's jump straight into it. First thing is meetings. We're going to talk about that now, is have a really clear agenda and purpose for every meeting. Now, I see time and time again, people's calendars are just stacked with back to back meetings, and there's no buffer zone between one meeting and the next. So they get to the end of the day and they've got all of these actions that they have to, action or implement, so what they're doing is they're staying after hours, or they're taking all of those actions to the next day, not actioning them, and then there's a whole lot of next day of meetings. And so what happens is the tasks or the action items or the conversations or even more meetings just flowing from one day to the next without being rounded off. And I talk to employees very often, and they often say, I don't even see the point in this meeting. So if your team doesn't see the point in turning up to a meeting, then the meeting there's going to be like this frustration cycle that's going to happen in the meeting where they're not really going to pay attention to what's going on in the meeting, because all they're doing is having that internal dialogue about going, there's no point me being here. What a waste of time. I could be doing other things. Or they might even be sitting on their computer in the physical space of the meeting, but they're doing nothing to do with what's actually happening in the meeting. They're working on something else. So having a really clear agenda and a purpose for every meeting. So they're two very different things, having an agenda and a purpose. A purpose is like, what's the point of this? So what is the point of this meeting? And maybe having three really key outcomes in the calendar invite that you send out. So that way what happens is your team can look at that meeting and go, I've got it. I can see why we need to be there. And now I know what I'm going to walk away with at the end of it. what we often do is we have an agenda with 15, 20 items that need to be addressed, and people are feeling stressed the minute that they walk in, because they're like, gosh, we're going to have so many things to do after this meeting that I haven't even actioned from the last one. And how many times in meetings, and I know I've been this when I've worked with teams myself, um, how many meeting agenda items are ongoing that just go from one meeting because no one's had time to action them. They're too complicated to have it as one project. They should actually be, reduced down into smaller chunks. But just think now, as a leader, what you can do to reduce the overwhelm for your team is to have a really clear purpose for what that meeting's about, and maybe not any more than 3 really key outcomes in the calendar invite. So that way people in advance can go, got it, know what the point of it is, and now I know the 3 things that we're going to cover. Now, it doesn't mean you won't be able to cover more things in it, but if there's 3 key outcomes in that meeting, then people know that it's not going to be 20 key outcomes, and then they're going to feel stressed and overwhelmed. So you can do things like, if you're using a Microsoft Teams platform, you can use like meeting notes tab, and you can capture and share agendas ahead of time. It might also be, I would say to people, make sure that you're sending an agenda out either the morning of the meeting, the day prior to the meeting. But if there's a lot of things that people need to action, you might need, in the action item of the agenda, is tagging them. And so what they're doing is they're getting a direct email. So you can do like at Angela Lockwood. And what Microsoft does and the Outlook platforms do is they automatically send me an email to say, hey, item's been assigned to you. You need to action that. So that's a really good way of helping people not feel overwhelmed, not see that the meetings are a waste of time. And if you can't, as a manager, come up with a purpose of the meeting and 3 really key outcomes, then maybe the meeting isn't purposeful. Maybe there's no point to it, and it could just be an email. And that'll save everyone time. It'll give people the gift of time and the gift of focus, because then they can do those bigger projects that maybe are more important. So if you can't come up with a purpose and can't come up with 3 key outcomes, maybe the meeting is not purposeful. All right, that's number 1. Set a really clear agenda and purpose for every single meeting. Another strategy to help reduce overwhelm for your team is having a no meeting focus block each week. All right, so what this is you block out at least one morning or an afternoon. It's very clear expectations on everybody that no meetings are allowed to be scheduled during that time. Now, for some of you who are listening to this, meetings may not be a problem for you in your workplace. It's just that getting in, doing the work, that's the problem. You've got so many customers that are coming through the door, which is an amazing problem to have. But maybe meetings aren't your thing. But this might be, it may not be a no meeting focus block. It just might be a no customer focus block. It might be a no email focus block. So whatever the thing is that is stopping you or preventing you from getting your sort of bigger, important projects done, set that time aside in your calendar as a no meeting, no distraction focus block. And it might be all right, I'm going to say it. Don't do it on a Friday afternoon. What I see time and time again is workplaces, they do this no meeting time on a Friday afternoon. Now, I understand that, but what happens is people are exhausted, just so tired by the end of the week on a Friday afternoon that they're not going to do deep work on a Friday afternoon if they've been working Monday till Friday every day. So have that no meeting focus block in the mornings are a really great time, because that's when people can do their best deep focused work. All right. So some people I see do in the afternoon. So they go, well, we're not going to do meetings in the afternoon so people can round off their day. But what we know is people focus best first thing in the morning when they've got the energy, they're not in decision fatigue mode, so they can get those deep projects done that they need to, or those complicated projects done that they need to. So that's your expectation that you set. We have no meetings during this time and no one is allowed to touch that time. that is your time to do what you need. Okay, so there are things like focus time in Teams if you use that, and it just is a way of protecting deep work time automatically. Okay, so no one can do that. All right, so no meeting focus blocks, no customer whatever it is, try to have it in the morning where your attention is at its best. Okay, the next one is a really great, I think, awareness. What often happens when we come into, again, this is a meetings one because it seems to dominate. It could also just be a conversation, but what we do is we ask for status updates that become a long drawn out conversation that take up 45 minutes out of an hour of a meeting. That it might be good if that is a great way that where everyone's problem solving and giving feedback, but what we need to be aware of time usage. So again, this comes back to the purpose of a meeting. Is the purpose of the meeting to have everybody share and to feel heard? Then maybe the status updates and things like that are allowed to have a little bit longer. But always reserve time for the action items. Always reserve time for the rounding off. I really like when meetings, if they're blocked, let's just say for an hour, that the meeting actually finishes at 45 minutes and it allows people 15 minutes extra to action the item straight away. And what that does is it means that people aren't sort of rolling over actions and the actions aren't building up over the course of the day, becoming a stress for people. So giving that sort of time buffer for people at the end of the meeting to actually do some of those quick wins and quick actions really allows people to be able to have a bit of breathing space. All right. So just be aware of how you use your time in a meeting, really, is the summary of that, is not allowing people just to talk. If you've got an agenda and there's a purpose to it, then that's the priority. But if your purpose is around allowing people to be heard and seen and have conversations, then of course that's different. But think about, have you allowed that buffer time for people so they're not just, right, everyone, great, thank you, pack up, go, and then they have to go back to their desk or back to their workspace and go, oh God, now I've got to have to action all of that. All right. So that's another really tangible way that you can reduce overwhelm for your team. Now, here's some a little bit of controversy here. Make it okay for people to say no and decline things. Now, this could be in relation to meetings. It could be in relation to a project. It could be in relation to sort of anything that suits your workplace where people can opt in or out. So it might be things like, just if we use the meeting as a context, is my presence actually adding value to this meeting? And it's a good question that you should encourage your employees to ask, because if there is a clear purpose and a clear agenda for it, but they're not really going to add any value to it, or even the actions don't relate to them, then allowing them to go, I don't actually need to be there. I don't need to be included in this. Then allowing them to do that. So optional attendance can also be tagged in team invites to reduce pressure for people. Okay, so sometimes people have to be there. Other times there are definite meetings or projects where people don't need, people just say, I'll loop you in. Sometimes people don't need to be looped in. And what we're doing is we're setting up an environment to make people feel overwhelmed, and almost by, what's the word? It's making them feel obliged to be a part of it because you've invited them. But most of the time, people don't need to be involved in that particular conversation. And again, can you feel as a manager and a leader that you are creating an environment where you're saying to people, I understand that your time is important. And as long as that they're giving the outcome that they need, that you need from them, and the work output that they need at the quality that you need, then just being aware of giving people some autonomy over how they use their time and the value that they're going to give to certain things. It allows people to feel so much more in control of their time, and what you'll find is a better work output because of it. What's another one that I can share with you? Really looking at allowing people quiet time. So quiet hours. We do this so much with kids. I work a lot in the space of sort of childcare and education. And what we do is we set up as almost like a non-negotiable, right, quiet time for kids, where everyone, the day, you just sort of press pause on their energy of the day. What I see in workplaces too often is the culture of go, go, go. Like everything is always on the go and moving, and people have to be going from that one to that one to that meeting and that conversation and that there. And you can feel it, right? It's just so chaotic. Having the expectation that quiet time is okay. And this almost comes back to a little bit of the deep work, but sometimes it's also really appreciating that some people's brains can't be go, go, go the whole workday. Sometimes people do need to press pause on the noise. Sometimes people do need to create a little bit of space in their day to allow them to breathe, literally allow them to breathe, but also allow their brain to recalibrate. I know often what I do is sometimes I hit what I call my point of no return. I know I'm not being very productive, and I know that I'm just shifting paper. I'm not really doing anything of real value. So I know in those times, and it comes back to the awareness stage of my AIM model of awareness, intention, and mastery, is that awareness time. If you're aware of your overwhelm behaviors, and if you can instill in your team an awareness of their overwhelm behaviors and maybe distraction behaviors, then allowing them to have a bit of that quiet time. It might be, like just half an hour. I just no interruptions, or I've got headphones on. I'm just locked in half an hour. And I see a lot of people have different strategies of this in workplaces that work, some don't. But having that quiet time feature even on their computer where they get no notifications, it might be an hour, it might be a half an hour. As long as they're not sitting there scrolling on Google or looking at social media, that's not quiet time. Quiet time is just space to be able to focus on what they need to focus on and just to dampen the noise of the day. And what you find really quickly is the more that people do this throughout their day, the less time that they actually need. And it usually compounds. There might be some days that are particularly stressful for people, and having that quiet time is their saving grace. Having the ability just to lock down notifications, no emails coming through, headphones on, they might be playing music, really allows their brain to be able to recalibrate and refocus so that they have the energy to sustain them for the rest of the day. I could do in fact, I will do a podcast episode just on that, because that quiet time and pressing pause throughout the day is often a saving grace for so many people. And we know that people become more productive as a result of these pressing pause moments. All right. I just want to finish off with one more. All right. There's so many I could share with you, but let's just finish off noting time with one more. Batching communications is a strategy I use myself, and I really recommend this for you. So this is for you to your team. What we often do is I see people having brain farts in their emails. So what I mean by having brain farts in their emails is it's like they get an idea and they quickly shoot off an email without really thinking about, do I need to send it? Is there a point to this? Or should I just give it a little bit of breathing space and leave it for the next meeting? One of the things that I do with this, because I'm really mindful of overwhelming people through email, is I will leave a little running tally. If I've got a weekly meeting with them, I leave literally a meeting notes next to my calendar invite of things that I want to talk to them about. So these are obviously things that can wait. But if you're having regular meetings with your team, sometimes they're weekly, it might be monthly. But if things aren't of high importance, then leave it for when you can batch the time together, or you can put it all in one email. And I know a lot of people say with emails, they like the thread of the email, which I totally understand. But just be aware of, are you brain farting your emails? So are you having an idea or I've got to let them know that, and then you send off an email. What's happening is people are getting thousands of emails sitting in their inbox. So even though it seems to have been a great idea of yours in the moment, think of the receiver and think, do they have the capacity to action this? Do they know what I want from them for this? And have I given them the space to be able to really, think it through and to be able to action it? Or can it wait where I can actually batch it to them? It might be, you might do it on a, say, Tuesday morning. You do a few emails off to them. It sits there because you know that that's their day of admin. And then you give them the breathing space for the rest of the week. So that is something that is definitely within your control to minimize the overwhelm of your team by batching communications to reduce those constant interruptions that our team members get. All right. And it could be a schedule send. So if you do have one of those brain farts that you go, yep, I want to send it off to them. But you don't have to do it straight away. You can schedule send your emails so that they all go in one hit. Now, some people might feel really overwhelmed getting, 5 different emails from you in one hit. But if they're not getting any others from you during the week, man, that is like a gift of time and a gift of attention for them. Okay, so there's a few strategies for you, my beautiful team leaders and managers, to be aware of to reduce the overwhelm of your team. We know our teams are working super hard. We know that there's a lot of distractions. We know that people are finding it really difficult to stay focused, to be productive, to use their energy well. We've got people, so many people. There's a pandemic, dare I say it, of overwhelm and burnout that often as a manager and a team leader, some shifts in your behavior can have a really positive ripple effect through your team. And you know this while I'm talking this, if you are not the senior manager and you are getting those brain fart emails, or you're having to go to so many meetings that you actually don't really need to be in, but you're looped in, or you're looped into CC in emails, or you've got all of these interruptions constantly, then take a moment to reflect and think, am I doing the same thing to my team? Okay, so if the things that are happening to you, if you don't like them, be really aware that and ask yourself, am I doing the same thing to my team? Bring awareness to it. And if you are, this is the perfect opportunity for you to shift your behavior. So hopefully some of those things that we've talked about today has been really useful. There are so many more strategies that I could share with you, and we will do that in another episode. But if you are a leader or a team manager in your organization and you want support in this, that you know that you want to develop your skills as a leader and a really effective leader in your organization, and you'd love some support, please reach out to me at support@angelalockwood.com.au. I do mentoring with people just like you who are wanting the best for their teams and just needs to learn some of those strategies themselves of how to really be an effective leader and an effective team manager, so that your team can absolutely flourish. So if you are interested, then reach out to me at support@angelalockwood.com.au, and we'll have that conversation of how I can support you be the best manager and the best leader that you possibly can for your team. And I love that you have got to this part of the episode, because it means that you are really invested in being that person that makes work and life a lot easier for your team. So it means that you are in exactly the right place that you need to be. But you don't have to do it alone. So reach out if you need some support. I am here for you. So hopefully that episode today really helped you in understanding how you can reduce overwhelm for your team. And please share this with anyone else that you know might be in your team that is managing a group of people, and you know that they would find a lot of benefit from this episode. Please share it with them. And don't forget to review and like or subscribe this episode on whatever platform you're listening to, because it just shows people that they too can get a lot of value out of listening to Distracted. But until next time, make sure you look after yourself. And also just thanks so much for turning up here on this episode and wanting to give the best to your team. All right, everyone, take care. I'm Angela Lockwood. Thanks so much for joining me here on Distracted.